What's up, everybody? In today's video, I'm giving you the skill ceiling tier list for Operation Commanding Force. Now, first of all, what is a skill ceiling? It is the amount of, or lack thereof, amount of skill you can obtain by playing a certain game or playing a certain operator. So let's go over some examples. So Castle is a very high skill ceiling operator. This means you can learn a lot with him. There is a lot to learn on how to play Castle correctly. It takes a lot of knowledge, it takes a lot of skill to learn how to play him on a base level. He's very hard to learn how to play correctly. That means, by definition, he has a high skill ceiling. Now let's take a look at somebody like Blackbeard. Blackbeard has a low skill ceiling. All you do is you put a shield on your face. There's no skill involved with playing Blackbeard. I suppose you need to learn how to upside down rappel or like look through pixel peaks with a shield, but that's it. There's no skill. With Castle, you have to learn entire strategies. You have to learn map presence, zoning, how to roam properly, how to control where the attackers go, when to peek, when not to peek, what utility to put where to put the shotgun holes. Like, there's just a lot to learn. That's why he's in the very high skill ceiling, and that's why Blackbeard's in the very low skill ceiling. Now that you know how the tier list works, let's go over the rest of the operators. Jaeger, I think, has a semi-low skill ceiling. There is some stuff that you can learn in terms of like where to put your ADSs, and like you can get really good with his gun, but that's it. There's not much you can learn with Jaeger. Does this mean that he's a bad operator? Absolutely not. As we said, Castle has a very high skill ceiling, but is not the best operator. So, like, you know, examples of that being shown here. Wamai, pretty much the exact same thing if I can find him as well. There's not much skill that you can put into Wamai. There is more skill than Jaeger, however, but still not much. You can learn where to put Wamai discs, you can learn the range of them, you can learn what they catch, but that's pretty much it. There's not much skill to be involved with that operator. As long as you're putting down his discs, you're going to get value out of him. Echo has a high skill ceiling. You can learn a lot of different things on how to use his cameras properly. You need to learn where to put them. You can learn all of these crazy different hiding spots that I've made countless videos on. You need to learn when to pop them out and use them. You need to learn how to use your teammates to swing off of your cameras. You need to learn how to use your deployable shield and coordinates with these Echo cameras. You need to learn how to control map presence with them, denying plants with them, right? Stuff like that. So definitely a high skill ceiling. His counterpart Maestro, same exact thing. You need to learn how to deny electronics with it, how to do wall denial with it, where to put them, how to put them over hatches that are broken so that people can't just melee them. A lot of skill involved with how good you can be at this operator. Again, does that mean these guys are great operators? No, there's just a lot of things that you can learn with them, and that's what a skill ceiling is. I'm going to keep reiterating it for you. Tachanka arguably has a medium skill ceiling. The only thing that you can learn with Tachanka is lineups with his grenades. You can learn crazy like cross-map lineups that are very, very hard to learn, but even when you do learn them, they're not all that effective, which is why it's only in the medium skill ceiling range. And because the lineups are really the only thing you can learn, that's all you can learn, right? So there's not much you can learn, but the one thing that you can learn, which is lineups, is very, very hard to learn, which makes me put him dead in the middle. Let's go over Azami. Azami is a very high skill ceiling operator. She's basically just Castle, but like a different taste of Castle. There are an infinite amount of things that you can do with Azami. Quite literally infinite. You can use her as deployable shields, you can use her as barricades, you can use her as makeshift reinforcements, you can use her to close up walls that have been opened, you can use her barricades to climb onto places where you normally wouldn't be able to climb onto by milking vault props. Like, there's an absolutely insane amount of things that you can do with her, and she's a very powerful operator because of that, so I'm putting her in the very high skill ceiling category for now. Sens, I'm also going to put in the high skill ceiling category. Again, not a great operator, right? But in terms of lineups, like with Tachanka, you can learn a lot of different lineups. You need to learn how to rush with him properly. You need to learn how to use his DMR, because arguably it is better than his AR. Even if you are using his AR, you have to learn the recoil of it, which is especially hard for people on console or for people that just don't know the right attachments in the first place. You need to learn how his gadget actually interacts, because the hitbox on the gadget is so big. It's actually very hard to control this thing properly in the way that you want it to control. You need to learn basic concepts like zoning and map control to know even where to put the smokes. Do you put them in doorways, or do you put them in hallways so you can cross the hallways earlier? Which hallways do you put them in? Which rooms do you put them in front of? Do you put them in front of defenders, or do you put them in front of yourself? Like, there's a bunch of different things you have to learn, and then you have to learn what counters it, because it's not just a smoke screen. It's an electronic smoke screen, so things like mute counters it. It can be countered by explosives, so there's a lot to learn with Sens in order to play him, even at an average level, right? So that's why he has a high skill ceiling. Sledge, I'm going to say, is a medium skill ceiling. You can put him in semi-low if you want to, but I'm going to put him in medium purely for the sake of how high the skill ceiling is for vertical play in general, not even including his 3 armorness and his 1.5 on his gun and his grenades, but just playing vertically alone has a very high skill ceiling because you can do multi-level vertical play, right? Aiming down through multiple flights of floors. You need to learn certain angles with vertical play. You need to know map control with vertical play. You need to know every single map and what you can play vertical on. You need to know what surfaces you can play vert through. And then going over his sledgehammer, it can destroy pretty much any bulletproof gadget in the game, right? So learning what things to destroy, when to destroy them, stuff like that. So there's a bit of a skill ceiling to him, but overall his kit is pretty simple. He just has a sledgehammer, right? Same thing for Buck. If I can find Buck here. Buck, medium skill ceiling. I would argue it's a teeny bit higher than Sledge's because it is a shotgun. You can actually play below vertically, and you can play below through many floors with him vertically. You can also open up barricades. There's a bit of a skill ceiling with Buck, but not too much, right? Because at a certain point it is just a shotgun. Kapkan, it's pretty low. You just have to learn where to place his Kapkan traps on the door, which is always just low. How many Kapkan traps to put on a door. You have to learn like the perspective of how Kapkan traps work. So if somebody like walks into a door, are they easily going to see your Kapkan trap, or are they going to not easily see it because of where they're naturally looking, because of where the door is on the map? That's pretty much it. You could argue for median, but compared to somebody like Tachanka, I just don't think there's that high of a skill ceiling for him. Same thing for Nomad. Just learning where to put her air jabs is really the most important thing, but that's pretty basic. Same thing with Nomad. You just have to kind of learn where to put her air jabs, but once you learn that, it's pretty basic from there. Like there's just not much you can do with Nomad. Does that mean again that she's a bad operator? No, you just can't learn much with her. IQ, I'm gonna put in low skill ceiling. There's not much you can learn. All you do is activate her scanner. You can use her scanner to help your people with EMP grenades better find like where on the wall the gadgets are, but that's pretty much it. I guess you could hunt down pulses and soluses, but even then you're still just using a scanner, right? So not much of a skill ceiling you can use with IQ. If you want to put it in semi-low, go ahead. Rook, same thing, pretty low skill ceiling. All you're doing is putting down Rook armor. I would honestly think there would be no skill ceiling, to be completely honest. I think he would be at the very bottom of skill ceiling for any tier list. I mean, I guess spawn peeking with a 2x scope, right? But that's about it. There's not much you can learn. Legion, I'm going to put in semi-low. He is pretty easy. You just put traps down in random places and you will get value out of him. But you know, you only have so many and you're only going to be alive for so long because of how fast-paced the meta is that you kind of want to learn where important Legion spots are, which usually the two most important ones are on all the staircases around the map, right? And then you have doorways leading to the site. And then if you want to get kind of creative, you can put it on like windows and stuff when they repel. So there is a bit of a skill ceiling there, but not too much. And then I want to talk about something a bit more controversial. All of the shield operators belong in very high skill ceiling. It takes an enormous amount of skill to even be able to scratch the surface of being average at playing shields. Not to mention, you can become an absolute beast with shield operators. There's so much skill that you can get playing each one of these shield operators. Just playing a shield in general, you can get so much skill, but then there's the actual individuality of which operator brings what on their shield. Like she brings electricity, she also brings a gun that you can 360 spin bot people with. He brings flashes and he's pretty fast. This guy extends his shield to where he cannot be shot no matter what, and you can unextend it unlike Clash. You can also get information. You have to learn how to take space. You have to learn zoning. Simple concepts like that would seem simple but are actually pretty complicated, especially when you're carrying a shield. You have to learn teamwork, right? So there's a very high skill ceiling with shield operators. And then we have most of the hard breachers. I'm gonna put all of them in medium skill ceiling. Medium skill ceiling for me. The reason they have a medium skill ceiling is because at like first glance they're pretty easy to use, but then you factor in their guns being very good that you can get very good with, and then you think, okay, there's thermite tricking, there's Habana tricking, you can learn long angles and lineups with Ace, right? So there is a bit of individuality and skill ceiling with them. Thermite tricking being that you can put thermite charges on walls or surfaces and blow them up, and now you're able to explode anything next to them. Great example is that one wall in Break Room on Theme Park. You can explode that wall with a thermite charge and it opens up the initiation wall. I'm sure a lot of you know what I'm talking about there. You can do the same thing on floors on like Small Tower, Oregon. You open the floor with a thermite charge from top Small Tower and then boom, the dining wall is suddenly open, right? So you can do a bunch of stuff with that. You can do it with barricades as well. Habana, highest skill ceiling of all the hard breachers in the entire game because she has all of the different sizes of pellets. So you can use her 2 pellets for soft destruction. You can use her 4 for lines of sight in reinforcements, and then you can use her 6 for big breaches. You can counter impact tricking with Hibana with just her 2 pellets. You can learn how to play vertical with Hibana, right, because of the breach charges and all the pellets. You can do a lot of destruction on bulletproof utility with just 2 pellets, right? So proximity breaching as well, definitely a medium skill ceiling for me. Ace, you can get very, very good at his gun. You can learn lineups with Ace, just like you can learn lineups with Tachanka. Like, you can throw these things across the map and get a perfect angle onto the wall if you learn lineups with Ace. There are very few that you can actually do this with, but I do know some. On the map Oregon, for example, you can go like borderline in spawn and throw an Ace charge and hit the closet wall without having to actually go in master or on the master balcony. So a bit of skill involved with him. Probably less than all the other hard breachers, but that's all the hard breachers there. The only other hard breacher in the game being Maverick, and I'm gonna put Maverick in high skill ceiling. There's just a lot you can do with Maverick, and there's a lot to learn if you want to be an effective Maverick player. First of all, Maverick tricking. Already a pretty complicated concept in and of itself, right? You have to get the top and the bottom of the wall. Not only that, but you have to get all 4 of the bars on the walls to break in order for the reinforcement to completely go away. You also need to learn how to play him in today's meta, which is completely different than how anyone's ever played Maverick, essentially just being an entry fragger that's really, really silent. He's just knock when knock is banned, really. You use him to go in like dirt on Clubhouse if you want to sneak into dirt. You can use him to open hatches. You can use him to make dots and reinforcements for lines of sight. There's a lot of things you can do with Maverick. There's so much to learn with him, especially in a solo queue environment, that he has an actually very high skill ceiling. Someone who doesn't, though, is Thunderbird. You put her healing stations down, that's it. There's nothing to it. There's literally nothing to it other than just putting her healing stations down. Same thing with Goyo. There is nothing to Goyo except for putting his things down. You can put him down on barricades, you can put him down your capcan traps, but still that's it. That's literally it. There's not much of a skill ceiling to Goyo at all. Is he a bad operator? Not at all. There's just not much you can do with him in terms of how skilled you can be with his utility. Oryx we can put in medium. You have to learn how to dash effectively. You have to learn how to run out effectively. You have to learn how to climb hatches, when to climb hatches, when you can safely do so, flank routes, how to roam properly, zoning, map control. His T5 with a 1.5 is a bit hard to control for some people if you have low sensitivity or you're on console. So because you're a roamer with high speed mobility, you need to be able to go from one side of the map to the other very fast to put pressures on all sides of the maps. You also are very fast, so you can play off of all of your barbed wire or proximity alarms, whichever you choose. So there's some skill to him. This one is going to make some people mad because he's by far one of the worst operators in the entire game, probably second to Blackbeard, but Grim has a medium skill ceiling. There's a lot that you can learn with Grim. It's just, even if you do learn what you can with Grim, he's still not effective. You can learn how to roam clear with Grim properly. Like if someone's in a room and you want to be able to roam clear them, you shoot some bees in there and it helps you roam clear. You can do plant denial with him. You can do site executes with him. You can burn with him. You can just get information with him, really, if you wanted to. So there is some skill. Even if you do learn the skill, not a good operator. Alibi is a medium skill ceiling, just of like where you can put her clones. Like there's some really cool spots you can put clones in. I wouldn't just put them on windows. I wouldn't just put them in the middle of the rooms. You want to be putting them behind walls. You can just put punch holes and random soft walls and put an alibi clone in there. So putting her in like really pre-fire heavy angles is a really good idea. Swinging off of your clones is a good idea. Using the intel that the clones give. Learning how to play a 3-speed with her gun. Learning how to play off her deployable shield with her bailiff. So there's some skill involved. Here's another weird pick. Capitao, I think, has a very high skill ceiling. There's a lot you can do with his fire bolts alone. You can clear out defenders. You can kill defenders. You can use it as a roam clearing device. You can use it as my disc burning. And then his smokes also have a high skill ceiling because they're not like any smoke in the entire game, where most smokes fall to the ground because they're a smoke grenade. His smokes actually stick, so you can make one-way smokes. You can use his smokes for side executes. You can use them for kills, roam clearing, getting plants down. You can use his fire for lack of rotation, like you would use gridlock tracks. So there's a lot to learn with Capitao, purely just based off of those 4 bolts. And then we have his gadgets, his secondary gadgets being the hard reaching charges. So using those hard reaching charges to then get in the building and being able to clear outside of the map. Aside from his utility, just the concept of what you use his utility for is a very advanced concept. And this is the only reason that he's this high. You have to learn how to take map control by clearing out roamers. And this is different than roam clearing, right? Because roam clearing is you drone a roamer out and the roamer leaves because he's scared. Or you take a gunfight with a roamer and you win and you take map control. With Capitao, you use his fire bolts and you use his smoke bolts to be able to make defenders run away from space. So then you can take that space to further use his fire bolts and his smoke bolts to create even more space. So kind of a complicated operator, but I'll go more in depth about 2 operators that that are just like him with Lion and with Dokkaebi. These two do what Capitao wish he could do, but 10 times better and way more efficient, and they bring way more utility with them. Lion, in terms of just his gadget in general, is the easiest gadget to use in the entire game, and arguably in and of itself has a low skill ceiling, but it's not the gadget itself, it's what you do around the gadget that has a very high skill ceiling. So you can do entire pushes, you can roam clear, you can take space, you can take map control, you can zone out defenders, you can use it for post plant, you can use it when your teammates are rushing, you can use it when you're executing on a site or executing a push in general. There's a lot that you can do, and there's very high advanced Lion players, especially in like Pro League and Challenger League, that use Lion very proficiently. Like, you can be a very effective Lion player by just clicking his button 3 random times, but if you strategize with these Lion scans, you can get very, very good at Lion. Same thing with Dokkaebi calls. You can use these calls at random times, but if you use them to roam clear, if you use them to create space, if you use them to get kills, if you use them when your team is rushing, there's a lot of value you can get out of it. And you can get value out of every defender cam in the entirety of all defense, right? So pretty good there. I'll put Thatcher in medium just because you have to learn how to counter bandit tricking, you have to learn how to counter Cade tricking, you have to learn how to strategize with a hard breach to be able to get the wall open in general, which is team coordination. You have to learn how long his Thatcher EMPs disable certain gadgets so you're not fucked by gadgets that you thought were disabled, you know what I mean? So there's a bit of skill to him, not too much though. Ashe and Yana I'm also going to put a medium skill ceiling. This is a tad bit controversial because they're seen as no skill operators, but you can become a very, very good Ashe player. You can become a very, very good Yana player because their fragging capability is so high. The fact that Ashe is a 3-speed with a G36C or R4C, whatever you run, automatically puts her from low to semi. But then you think of her utility, like, okay, it's a ranged breach. That in and of itself takes skill because you can use it to deny bandit triggers, you can use it to deny a bunch of other things, get bulletproof utility, right? So that already moves her up another tier. Same thing with Yana, right? Yana has 2 of the best guns in the game, and she has infinite droning. You can learn how to be very efficient with her clone, which immediately goes from low to semi, but then she has frag grenades as well, and you can use these Yana clones to get rune gates, to start pushes, to get intel for your team if you're using her for teamwork, to roam clear. So that immediately puts her in medium again for me. Another operator in this category you might disagree being medium, I think, is Thorn and Frost for that matter. They're both trap operators who might seem very simple, but what you can do with their traps can require some skill if you're good at the operator. Like, there's some Frost traps that you can put like behind couches or under breaches or like just in really inconvenient spots that nobody would think to trick that could get you some free kills. Also, she brings a deployable shield, so being able to learn how to play off of deployable shield takes some skill. Same thing with Thorn, deployable shield, really good gun, and you can combo her utility, again, same thing with Frost, with other utility like Melusi Banshees or barbed wire. You need to learn how to hide her utility. There's a lot of places that you can hide it, like common plant spots, common entrances to the site, so there's a bit of skill, right? That's why she's medium. Bandit and Cade I'm also going to put medium. The only reason that they're not lower is because bandit tricking is a thing. You need to learn how to bandit trick, and Cade tricking is a thing. You need to learn how to Cade trick, which is arguably harder than bandit tricking if you think about the time allotted that you have to react. But in terms of the actual action, bandit tricking is harder, so it doesn't really matter. They're both kind of hard to learn. Smoke, I think, is a very high skill ceiling operator. There's so much you can do with smoke grenades in terms of like map control, slowing down attacker rushes, denying plants, and then there's how you throw smoke grenades. You can make holes to throw your smoke grenades, learning the trajectory of each smoke grenade throw, learning how to use his SMG-11 and shotgun combo, learning how to use a shotgun to set up sight, how to use all of his utility in coherence with a deployable shield and with sight setup. There's just a lot to learn with him. Same thing with Mute, but to a lesser extent. I think Mute has a high skill ceiling. The only thing that separates Mute and Smoke is that Smoke's utility is a lot harder to use, and you can find a lot more useful ways and a lot more versatile ways to use a smoke grenade than you can a Mute Jammer. And Mute Jammer is really versatile, but doesn't take much skill to use. You just put it down, right? You have to be pretty accurate and learn some lineups and create some lineups with Smoke to be able to be effective with him. Mute still has a shotgun SMG-11 combo that you can get pretty good at. He has a nitro cell you can get pretty good at. You can use Mute Jammers on roams. You can use them for drone denial, wall denial, map control. So there's a lot that you can do with Mute Jammers in general that would automatically bring me up to medium, but because he has SMG-11 and shotgun combo, I put him up to high. Gridlock I'm going to put in medium. There's a lot that you can do in terms of like rushing sites with her, locking down the grid of rotations, You can use it to cover plants, you can use it for flank watch, you can use her smokes and all of her other gadgets with her Gaunt 6 to completely just rush a site with utility, right? So medium skill ceiling. Pulse, I want to say, is a low skill ceiling. The only thing that you really need to learn how to do with Pulse is play vertically. That's pretty much it. Honestly, if I'm being dead ass, I think Solus is the same thing. Solus is pretty low skill ceiling. It's like IQ, but at least with Solus, you can deny plants and you can deny people with C4s if you have a teammate, or you can like shoot people through the floor if they have a phone, if they're droning, if they're playing Dokkaebi, right? So like you can learn some things with Solus, you just can't learn a lot, right? So that's why I'm putting her in semi to low. Doc, I'm gonna put in semi low. The reason that Doc is not with Rook or with Thunderbird is because the only skill that you have to have with Doc is learning the trajectory and the speed of the actual pistols that you're shooting at people, because if you're trying to shoot someone that's running, it can actually be pretty difficult. But that's it. That's the only reason I put him above these two, because with these two, all you have to do is put it down. With him, you actually have to be able to hit a moving target or to have teamwork to tell your teammates to sit still. But that's it. Cav, I want to say, is low. You can become a really good Cav player, but it doesn't take much skill to do so. The only thing that makes Cav good is the fact that she's silent, and if you know when to use that silence, you can become good at Cav, but it doesn't take much. You just have to know when to use her silence and when to flank. Nook, I'll put in medium. Using Cav's sneak is a lot easier than using Nook's, because Nook gets a lot less silent than Cav does, and you actually have to think about dodging certain utility, as with Cav you just have to worry about dodging audio, right? So it takes just a tiny bit more skill to play Cav, or with Nook, sorry. And with Nook you have to learn when to time her rushes as well. Like the later in the round you do it, the more effective it's gonna be. So there's a bit of skill involved with Nook, but that's pretty much it. Finka, I want to say I'll put in low. Just not much you can learn with her other than her adrenal surges. Mira, I'll also put in low. Mira's an amazing operator, but all you're doing is putting a window on a reinforcement. Not much you can learn there. Now the two sniper operators are going to be a bit weird to place, because you can make an argument for high or very high because of how hard their snipers are to use, but their abilities aren't. Their abilities are very, very easy to use. And if you're gonna say like, oh well, you can get really good at their weapons, well, we're in a one-shot headshot game. You can get good with any weapon and become a beast that hits every single shot. So with that train of logic, every operator should be very high skill ceiling, right? That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm putting the sniper operators in semi-low, excluding their guns. Just talking about their utility, it takes absolutely zero skill to be able to use their utility correctly. With Cal, I see some, because you have to open up lines of sight for you to be able to use it. Same thing with Glaz, you have to learn correct positioning and you have to learn like how to use a gun, but that's it. Like there's nothing really beyond that. Jackal, same thing. You just have to learn to press your headset and scan footprints. You can use the lack of footprints to be able to know where the enemies aren't and therefore roam clear faster, and you also need to learn when to use it or else you'll get shot mid footstep scan. So that's why I'll put him in low and not super low, but not much other than that. Same thing with Amaru. Really, with Jackal and Amaru, it's just timing. You have to learn when to time your ability, and there's certain strats that you can do with Amaru as well, like going up patches and whatnot. So that's pretty much it. Brava, I'm gonna put in very high skill ceiling, because not only do you have to learn how to use her gadget to hack other gadgets, but you have to learn every single other gadget in the entire game. So Brava, aside for maybe one other operator that I'll talk about later, has I think the highest skill ceiling in the entire game, because you have to learn how to play every other single electronic operator in the entire game. You have to learn how to play Echo, you have to learn how to play Maestro, you have to learn how to play Mute, because you need to be able to play off of his Mute jammers, you have to learn how to play Alibi so that you can swing off of Alibi clones, you have to learn how to play Legion to swing off of Legion mines, you have to learn how to play all these different operators in order to be effective with Brava, right? Melusi, Thorn, right? Like all these different operators. So very high skill ceiling, arguably the highest, other than Mozzie, who has a slightly higher skill ceiling than Brava. Only because Mozzie can hack Brava and take Brava's drones over, meaning that not only does he have to learn how to use Mozzie's utility, but he has to learn how to use Brava's utility, which inherently means that he has to learn how to use every single defending and attacking operator utility, because you can hack every single gadget in the entire game. So because of that, these two operators have the highest skill skilling in the entire game. Warden is pretty low. You just have to learn when to peek and how to peek through smokes and through flashes. That's pretty much it. Melusi, you just put your gadgets down and you swing off of them. That's pretty much it. Same thing with Vigil, you just have to learn how to use his ability in terms of like, do you move, do you crouch, do you stand still, when do you activate it? You can go drone hunting with Vigil scans. So that's pretty much it. You can't really do much with him. Same thing with Fuse. I think Fuse, I'll put him in semi-low. Not much you can do with him other than learning the trajectory of his Fuse charges to be able to get kills or to be able to clear utility. That's it. Flores, I'm going to put in medium. Flores, you need to learn how to use his drones properly. You need to learn how to not get countered, how to not get shot. You need to learn like how his drones move in order to move with them. You need to learn what utility to get. So there's some stuff to learn with him, just not much. Same thing with Twitch. Gotta learn how to move the drone. Gotta learn how to keep it safe. Gotta learn how to shoot and what to shoot. Same thing with Zero. Gotta learn where to put his cameras. Gotta learn how to shoot with his cameras. Gotta be on his cameras. Gotta get wall stuff with his cameras. So pretty medium. Let's talk about Aruni. What do I want to do with Aruni? I'll put Aruni in medium because you have to learn how to make rotate, site setup. You have to learn how to protect utility with her utility. You have to learn the DMR if you want to play the DMR, which is pretty hard to learn. So she's medium. Valkyrie will put in high. I think Valkyrie has a pretty high skill ceiling just because of how good you can get with hiding her cameras and the nitro cell traps. Ella I'll also put in high. You can get very, very good with her guns. Her guns are outstanding, but only if you're good at them. And then you can also get good with using her guns behind her deployable shield in tandem with her stuns, right? So you can get kind of good. Same thing with Zofia. You can get very good at her weapons, and you can get very good at using her utility to clear soft destruction and to stun enemies. And I think I'm actually going to put Osa and Ying all in the high skill ceiling category as well. Ying, same thing as Lion. You have to use her utility, not like flash grenades, but as a way to take space and to create pushes. I could honestly put her in very high skill ceiling, but at a certain point, it is just a flash grenade. There's not much you can do with it. Osa as well is just a moving deployable shield. Like I said, shield operators already are pretty high in the skill ceiling ratio, but Osa's just a little bit lower because you kind of use her more as a deployable shield and less as a shield operator, if that makes sense. So I'll put her in high for now, but that's pretty much it for the entire tier list. If you like the tier list, like down below, sub the channel down below as well. My name's Alka, and I will see you on the next video. Later.